Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and another video. Today's video is the start of a brand new series of videos called Let's Start at the Very Beginning, because quite frankly, it's
a very good place to start.
That was bad. Don't forget to subscribe. The aim of this series is I want to feed all the rugby purists out there with some proper rugby-based content rather than just completely avoiding the topic like I have been so far in the episodes of Anything But Rugby, which you can check out on my channel straight after this video. I'm going to be interviewing other rugby players, talking to them about their career, about their rugby journey and all the highs and all the lows. Today I'm chatting with none other than USA Eagles Captain America himself, Will Hooley.
Oh my word, you're bald.
Will Hooley, welcome to the channel.
How you doing? You all right?
Let's dig straight into it. Let's start at the very beginning. Cambridge Minis, right? If someone had come up to you, mini groups at Cambridge, and said, one day, in the not too distant future, you'll be a full-time professional rugby player at the World Cup in Japan, playing against England, what are you saying?
Oh man, I mean, yeah, it sounds nuts, doesn't it? Especially the latter. As a young English player, yeah. Actually playing against England. Look, I think for me, I remember it was 5 years old when I started out, and I think there's always sort of cliche journeys about how you just fall in love with it and stuff like that. But I kind of did. I actually remember I was wearing a Liverpool training top at the time, Liverpool football, and I was quite clearly really not knowing what I was going into. But it was my dad's probably Sunday morning with his mates and bring your kid along type thing. And just got sort of thrusted into it. And ever since then, it's been a massive part of my life. And yeah, obviously things have gone pretty well overall. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I always want to do more and be better. But at the same time, as you just say it like that, yeah, it's pretty mad. And one that actually, proud about, I guess, in many aspects.
And then you went to the Leeds school. Do you think it suited you being at a school team where you could almost be in a good team but very much stand out, as opposed to, your Millfields where everyone's almost in that same boat where they might make it?
Yeah, it's good thinking really, because I was fortunate probably in terms of my year group at school was really good. So we had some very talented players. We were quite a small school with the Leeds. But we're fortunate we had a lot of sporting talent, and I think that always helps. I mean, it's all well and good, being a good individual player, but you need to be in kind of a good team to come through well. I do believe that. But you're right. I mean, if I was just part of the sort of conveyor belt of the ACE schools or whatever it might be, then would I have maybe shone as much? I don't know. But at the same time, the other thing with my school, I was very fortunate. I went to a lovely school. The Leeds is a lovely school and had great facilities, people who believed in me, people who, invested their time to help me. And, I always count myself very lucky. There's kids who unfortunately probably don't get that opportunity. And I do think actually rugby as a whole maybe has a bad stigma about that, in terms of it's played a lot of the private schools and maybe not so much in the state schools. And that is a shame. Definitely needs to be looked at. But for me personally, I was in a school whereby it was small, but it was very sort of intense in terms of like we were a good rugby team. So therefore we wanted to go and play in the Daily Mail Cup, go to Rosalind Park Sevens, and we would do well as well. So that for me was great because it just kept my competitive sort of nature, my competitive rugby going all the way through up until when I left school. And then of course went into professional rugby after that.
Before you turned pro, you were with Saints up through the age groups?
Yeah.
Were there any particular coaches during your time at Saints that you felt were instrumental to getting your career off the ground?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's plenty of coaches over the years. I think the ones that probably stand out the most is actually the ones who I'm sort of still in contact with now. I remember Simon Sinclair, who is now actually director of sport at Bedford Modern. Hell of a character, Simon. And I remember he worked with me from the age of about 14. In fact, he was my first. Back then, it was called the Northampton Saints EPDG at Colford School on like a Monday evening with literally two makeshift floodlights on a Colford rugby field. It was pretty humble. And he was my first kind of coach from Northampton that I sort of recognised with. But then, so Simon Sinclair and then Ali Heifer actually as well, who then of course is is a leading coach at Exeter Chiefs. And Ali saw me right the way through when I was sort of 13, 14, 15. And it was probably a big reason why I went to the Chiefs, actually, in my professional career.
It's funny that you mentioned Simon Sinclair there, because I worked with Simon quite closely, like you said, in that EPDG leading up to that Junior Saints Academy period. Playing 10, he always used to say, you know, if you want to see what it takes, if you want to get better as a player, go and watch this guy, Will Hooley. And then I remember very, very vividly, I was 15 and we just found out that, you know, if we were going from the EPDG into the Junior Saints Academy and we were going for like a taster session up at the Gardens, that would have been your under 18 year, sort of, you were finishing up. I think you knew you had a contract, but I think you had one more like under 18s game that weekend. Yeah. Doing a team run, you were sort of taking lead on that and us just like standing there on the side. And I remember I got put in for a rep, and I, for the life of me, didn't understand why. I was like, not sure what's going on. I'm gonna boss this, like these lads are watching. And my first call, my voice broke, and I wanted the Franklin's Gardens turf to just swallow me up. Was there any danger, 18 years old, Northampton Saints give you that contract, was there any danger where I think some youngsters get stuck as you thought, right, I've made it here?
To be honest, mate, I think it's still a problem now in the game. And I do think maybe it's the structure of things, you know, things way above my pay grade. But I think the issue is that 18-year-olds are coming in from school into the academy, and I do, to a degree, think in their mental state that they've kind of made it. And then if it all comes tumbling down, some people are way much later developers. I mean, put it this way, I remember in that England under-18 team, I mean, I reckon half that squad went on to actually play what I would call Premiership rugby, professional rugby, and even a handful international rugby. Not even a handful, probably. And it's kind of like, it feels like maybe at that age it's the be all or end all. And actually it just so isn't. And what I'm trying to say as well is when you get that tap on the shoulder, and I've seen it with 19-year-olds after a year and say, I'm sorry, we're not going to renew your contract, their world comes crashing down. And it's almost like, oh my God, like actually, you know, that dream was over just like that. I like to think that I probably, I like to think pretty driven, and I like to think I've had successes, but I also like to think I've not succeeded as much as I would have always liked to. I'm always wanting to do something more. I'm always wanting to be at the next level and stuff like that. And I know the road is rocky, and my road absolutely has been rocky. I've no doubt about that. And it hasn't been perfect. And do I perceive myself? I look back and think, geez, I should have done better there, or taken that opportunity better. That, you know, but I think when I was 18, no, I like to think I was pretty level-headed as to where I was at.
From Saints, we went to Exeter, and raised in Cambridge, moved to Northampton playing. It's not particularly far away from each other. Exeter's the bottom of the country, quite isolated. Was that on its own just quite a big adjustment?
Yeah, well, to be honest, mate, it was very much my decision. So I was, I think I was 21 at the time, or 22 when I left Northampton, and my decision was really based that I had an amazing time. So come through the first team, had some good amount of rugby in the Premiership, in Europe, and whatever it might be. And unfortunately, the one thing I was gutted about is not to be in the 23 for the final, the Premiership final, which Northampton won. I had a good season that year. I remember it was actually Jimmy Wilson. Jimmy Wilson was on the bench because he could play in all positions, which is fair enough. And Jimmy's a pretty class player. But I thought everything was going very well. But I think what I realised is that, and we actually talked about this before, is I was always that youngster at Northampton, and I always felt I was always going to be labelled as like the academy product, which I think in some ways is good. But I felt a change had to be done. There was an offer on the table from another club that I remember rejecting quite early on in the season, because I was very much like, no, I'm going to stay at Northampton. And it came quite clear to me that maybe the opportunity that I was going to get wasn't going to be as much as I thought I might deserve, or one that I just was going to be given by the coaches. And there was nothing against Jim Mallender or the coaches at the time. You know, I've got a huge respect for Jim. he gave me my first opportunity to play in the Prem, you know, and play in Europe. But I needed a change and a challenge, and this opportunity came up from Exeter Chiefs, and as I say, it was Ali Hifa who's the one who picked me out, and I just thought, this is a great way, you know, it's a good deal, it's good for me, and this is a great way of going down and challenging myself and being part of what I thought being a proper professional first team player as well.
And I think there is a difference coming into a pre-season and you are assigning, you know, boys are saying, oh, who have we signed this year? Oh, Will Hooley, not this lad's made the jump up from academy graduate. What led to leaving Exeter?
Well, basically, mate, I had a really good first year, and I was actually probably fortunate. Henry Slade had a leg break, and I actually got some good game time off the bench. Again, the Premiership and in Europe, and I like to think did well. We won the Aviva A League at the time, and everything was kind of materialising quite nicely. And I had another year in my contract, and everything was very good. You know, I'm not going to lie. I remember Gareth Steenson had the most unbelievable year, never got injured. So it was always very hard to get my starts. So I had to work hard to even just get, you know, 2 or 3 starts. But it was in my second year, unfortunately, I'll never forget it. Well, I did forget it because unfortunately I got knocked out. But at the Stoop, mate, against Harlequins, big Matt Luamanu, Samoan, early on in the game, I mean, just got taken out. And actually, even back then, you know, the laws probably weren't as strict as they are now. I don't think he actually got a red card. But look, nothing personal, but that for me, I spent a lengthy period out, you know, a good few months. I think the club were brilliant with me, Exeter. They really looked after me, and they basically kept telling me, like, well, you know, this is just not worth coming back anytime too early, you know, ease your way back into it. And it took a lot of time. And I remember this happened in November 2016. And by February, beginning kind of February of 2017, I remember going to Rob Baxter and just saying, look, Rob, what is the opportunity for me moving forward? And he was very honest, and I respect him to this day for being honest. He basically said, well, I don't know how much of an opportunity there will be for you, you know. And then we talked about, actually, the best thing for me is to go and play.
I was going to ask at what point in the timeline USA come a knocking.
But it was literally a game against Worcester for Exeter, and my dad sat next to this couple in the stands, and they were American. It's my dad's side of the family that is my grandmother, who is born and bred in Los Angeles. And literally at the end of the game, they were just talking, not about rugby. And the guy just turns around to my dad, but well, why are you here? And I was like, well, that's my son who's just come on. I think I came on for 20 minutes, did pretty well actually that day against Worcester. And this guy was then one of the directors of rugby at USA Rugby. It was literally like, it could not have been scripted more. But then the next thing, it was January 2018, I made my debut for the US.
I'd imagine a few sort of test match winning kicks probably help with your stature within the squad as well.
Yeah, mate. Sorry, my dog's just come in. Get down.
And like, if someone said to me now, out of your whole career, what has been the most enjoyable and like hold on memories type thing, it's any time I play in a US jersey. The group of guys we have, the camaraderie, the fun, the work ethic, the traveling around the world, the matches that we played in, the stadiums we played in, the results as well. Sadly, we were poor at the World Cup, but like, it was the best decision I made. And categorically to this day, I would tell everyone is if there's an avenue for you to go out and make your career even bigger and better, such as play international rugby, and you've got a real passion, and my family has a massive passion for the US, go do it, because you're only going to get one career. So you might, you know, England rugby, great, but there was no chance of them to get near that. So you got to take it on the chin and then make the most of it.
What I'm hoping with these videos is that any young rugby player watching or listening will not only be inspired by your journey, but also the importance of having a life outside of the sport, which I personally think is massive. And obviously you, with your writing, for anyone that doesn't know, Will's a fantastic writer, writes for The Guardian. Just how important it is to have your other things.
Mate, it's the thing is obviously me and you will talk about this, and still I think the stigma in rugby is sometimes a bit like, oh, you know, journo this, or someone who's doing something else on the side, you know, it's almost a bit of a Mickey take, like when boys are doing stuff that's not rugby, and it's like my mind is probably annoyingly sometimes. First thing when I wake up, I think about probably is rugby, and the last thing when I go to bed is probably something to do about rugby. But if you can have something else going on in your life, geez, you realise how important it is, especially in the time and the age we live in at the moment. Like, you realise rugby is so short term, it's actually quite vulnerable, and the more you kind of get so wound up in it, I don't think it's really good for you mentally wise, probably even physically wise. And and I said about the short term career, we will all finish, and when we finish, like no one's going to be talking about Dan Lewis, Will Hooley as the rugby player. You know what I mean? In like 20 years' time, they're just not, because they're going to be someone else coming through.
We started at Cambridge Minis. I've got this last card in front of me. Rugby World Cup 2019, Japan. Just how good?
How good, mate! It was, and actually, I'm not joking. It's probably only been in the last few weeks because I've actually had time to chat to boys, to chat to friends, or chat to even the missus, although she gets bored about me talking about rugby. I try not to. But like, it's only been recently I actually reflected on it, and it was an incredible occasion, incredible memories. Everything from the country, Japan is just amazing. The way they got behind the tournament, the culture, the stadiums, the locations. I mean, like the absolute underpinning memory for me is they had the big drums that drum you out before the game. You're in that tunnel, and everything in that tunnel, you're just thinking like, throughout my 26 years on this earth, obviously I didn't play rugby for 26 years, but ever since that 5-year-old at Cambridge, that is where I wanted to be. That feeling of going out, going into the arena, and then being in front of the world stage, playing against some of the best teams, best players in the world.
Guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Will for coming on. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a little thumbs up and please subscribe so you don't miss any other videos. Stay safe and bye-bye.